Amelia threw her full weight against it, her widow's back straining against the storm's might. The wooden door groaned in protest, as if the winter wind of 1885 were pushing back with its own hands, determined to seal her inside this solitary cabin. The fear of being buried alive under feet of snow, a very real fear in the Dakota Territory, drove her on. In the 3 years since Daniel's passing, Amelia Farnsworth had learned that survival in this unforgiving land demanded constant vigilance. When a gap was finally forced, a blade of frigid air sliced inside. She had only meant a quick glance, but an unfamiliar sound, a faint whimper almost lost in the howl of the wind, made her freeze. It was not the groan of wood or the shriek of the gale. It was the sound of life, and it was in peril. Her heart hammered. Every instinct told her to slam the door shut, to retreat to the safety of her hearth. But the image of some living thing dying just outside her door held her fast. Clutching the lantern, she plunged outside, its meager light cutting only a small circle in the white fury. The snow was knee-deep, and every step was a struggle. Then she saw it, a dark bundle already almost consumed by the snow. Her hands, numb and clumsy, brushed away the biting frost. Beneath the thin, tattered blanket was a tiny, purpled face. Then another and another. 3 infants, 3 tiny Lakota souls, on the very threshold of death. There was no time for thought, no time for fear. An instinct more powerful than her own survival rose up. Amelia scooped all 3 into her arms, shielding them from the storm with her own body. She staggered back inside, fighting for the lives fate had laid upon her doorstep. Inside, her world narrowed to a series of urgent actions. She gently placed the small shivering bodies on her bed and frantically stoked the fire until it blazed fiercely. She wrapped them in every cloth she owned, from old, worn blankets to her own finest shawl. The gradual warmth stirred them, and their weak cries were the sweetest sound Amelia had ever heard. She knelt beside them, whispering nonsensical comforts. A silent vow formed in her heart. She would not let them die. Throughout the long night, she became their mother. She made a thin oat gruel and patiently fed each one with a small dropper. As the gray dawn filtered through the frozen window pane, she saw that one of the 3 small pairs of eyes had opened, regarding her with a deep quietness. The other 2 were breathing more evenly. They had survived the worst of it, but the battle was not over. Amelia looked at her empty pantry. Her meager supplies would not be enough. The town of Maple Bend, with its promise of aid and its danger of prejudice, lay several snow-covered miles away. The decision was made. For them, she would have to face the storm once more. The journey to Maple Bend was a desperate pilgrimage. Amelia placed the 3 small souls in a large wicker basket, lining it with every towel and linen she could find to create a cocoon against the cold. Each step, sinking into the deep snow, was a small victory against a merciless nature. The wind was a physical enemy, whipping at her face and trying to snatch the precious cargo from her arms. But the thought of 3 faint heartbeats depending on her gave her a strength she never knew she possessed. After 2 hours of relentless struggle, a sight ignited hope within her, thin gray columns of smoke rising from the chimneys of distant wooden buildings. Maple Bend, a mere cluster of a dozen structures along a single rutted road, appeared like an oasis of life in the white ocean. The bell above the door of Harriet Clean's general store tinkled as Amelia pushed her way inside. Harriet, a stout woman with kind eyes, looked up from her counter. "Amelia, for God's sake," she exclaimed. "Are you mad coming out in this?" "They need help, Harriet," Amelia said breathlessly. Placing the heavy basket on the wooden counter, Harriet's expression shifted from concern to stunned disbelief as she gently peeled back a corner of the blanket. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her eyes darted to the window, as if expecting an angry father or mother to storm in at any moment. "Where? How?" "On my doorstep last night," Amelia explained concisely. I need milk, medicine, everything. Harriet sprang into action, her confusion giving way to practicality. We have powdered goat's milk. Barley and wheat flour, my mother used to make a thin porridge for babies. As Harriet gathered the items, Amelia felt the stares of two men standing nearby. One, wearing a battered hat, spat tobacco into a spittoon and spoke, his tone not entirely unkind, but filled with raw curiosity. What's the sense in taking on that burden, Amelia? There's a reason they were left, I'd wager. Amelia stiffened at the implication. They're just children, she replied, her voice steady. And they need help. Harriet gave her a sympathetic glance. You know how it is, Amelia, she said quietly. There's tension with the Lakota after that last business with the cattle. No, Amelia whispered. But if we let innocent babes freeze to death, what does that say about us? Her eyes shone with a fierce determination. Harriet patted her hand. It says you have a heart bigger than this whole territory. Go see Doc Walters now. He's a particular man, but he'll help. Doc Walters' small clinic, situated above his living quarters, smelled of antiseptic and stale pipe tobacco. A middle-aged man with thinning hair, wearing suspenders over a rumpled shirt, opened the door with a scowl. What is it, Farnsworth? It's babies, doctor, they need you. She pushed the basket inside. They're Lakota. The man's scowl softened. Slightly. One by one, he examined them with professional hands, listening to their hearts and checking for frostbite. They're damned lucky, he pronounced after a long moment, his tone having lost its edge. No permanent damage as far as I can tell. Keep them warm, keep them fed. If you see a fever, come back. He paused, looking Amelia straight in the eye, one eyebrow raised. You're taking on more than you can handle, Farnsworth. People are going to start talking. Let them talk, she answered, her gaze unwavering as she looked down at the three sleeping faces. The journey back was even more difficult. But as Amelia settled the children by the fire, feeding them the barley mixture Harriet had suggested, a temporary peace settled over the cabin. That peace did not last. The next day, as she was chopping wood, a rider approached. It was Seth Bullock, the newly appointed sheriff of Maple Bend, a man known for his stern principles and no-nonsense demeanor. He was polite, tipping his hat as he requested to come. Inside, Bullock's gaze fell on the makeshift grib. So the rumors are true, he murmured. Yes, Sheriff. Bullock nodded, his eyes scanning the simple room. I don't doubt your intentions, Mrs. Farnsworth, he said, his voice serious. But the Lakota will not take kindly to their children being taken, for any reason. And the folks in Maple Bend are on edge. You've put yourself between two fires. He paused, letting the weight of his words fill the air. Good intentions in this land are sometimes overshadowed by fear and suspicion. Be careful. Amelia watched him leave, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions in her chest. She looked out at the white emptiness, feeling the circle of isolation tightening around her, colder even than the winter itself. The following days passed in a heavy quiet, broken only by the hungry cries of the infants and the murmur of the fire. But outside the cabin, in Maple Bend, the silence had been broken. Poisonous whispers crept through the town like a winter. Plague. Amelia Farnsworth had stolen Indian babies. Amelia Farnsworth was consorting with savages. Harriet still visited, bringing fresh bread and words of comfort, but her eyes could not hide her growing anxiety. They're talking about Robert Grady, Harriet confessed during one visit, her voice lowered to a near whisper. Him and a few other ranchers are riding the plains, acting as a law unto themselves, searching for what they call raiders. She gripped Amelia's hand. If they find out you're here with these children. Fear was an unwelcome guest, Amelia knew all too well. But she would not let it make her a prisoner. She needed fresh water, and she could not leave the children alone. 10 days after the storm, She placed them in her homemade sled, carefully sheltered, and pulled them towards the nearby creek. The creek, a silver ribbon winding between snow-covered pines, was the only place with a remaining sound of life. As Amelia knelt to fill her bucket, a small sound, the crunch of a hoof on frozen ground, made her jolt upright. Her heart stopped. A figure emerged from between the trees, as silent as the winter forest itself. He sat atop his horse, wrapped in a buffalo hide, a rifle resting across his lap. Amelia immediately stepped back, instinctively shielding the sled. The rider urged his horse forward, not with haste, not with threat. She could see him more clearly now. A Lakota man with high cheekbones, long braided hair, and sharp eyes that were unreadable but held a profound sorrow. He slowly dismounted, raising one hand in a gesture of peace. "I am many horses," he said, his voice low and measured, his English accented but clear. "I mean you no harm." Amelia struggled to keep her own voice steady. "Hello." The man's gaze moved past her and settled on the sled. A flicker of pain crossed his weathered face. "I heard rumors," he said. "3 children, found near the cabin of a white woman." He hesitated, his voice growing thick with emotion. "I am searching for my nieces and nephew." Amelia's chest tightened. They ... "They are your family?" Many horses nodded, a slow, heavy gesture. "My sister, their mother," he explained. The grief in his voice, raw and undeniable, drew her last breath as she gave them life. The family watching them was attacked on the plains. The women fled, leaving the babies where they hoped a kind soul might find them. "We thought they were lost to the storm." A wave of emotion, relief, sorrow, understanding washed over Amelia. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I did what I could." Many horses came closer, and with her silent permission, he gently pulled back the blanket. Upon seeing the 3 small rosy faces sleeping peacefully, a rare, sad smile touched his lips. He whispered their names in his own tongue, sounds that were like a prayer. He turned back to Amelia, gratitude radiating from his eyes. "Their father, Kanji Seva White Crow, is searching for them. He is a respected warrior. May I take you to him?" 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind. To ride alone into a Lakota camp was a dangerous proposition. But as she looked down at the children, she knew they belonged there, with their father, with their people. "I will go," she said, her voice firm, "but we must be careful. There are men in Maple Bend who will not want to see this." "I know, many," horses replied. "We do not seek war. We only want our family to be whole." Before mounting his horse, he looked at her, a true question in his eyes. "Why did you save them?" "You had no obligation." Amelia looked at the silent pines, then at the man before her. "Because they are innocent souls," she said. "And I know all too well the feeling of losing family." A silent respect passed between them. Then he turned his horse and vanished back into the pines, leaving Amelia alone with her decision and the promise of the journey to come. That night, Amelia barely slept. She spent the hours preparing. She packed what was necessary: dried food, the last of her medicines, and her best blankets for the children. On a piece of parchment, she hastily wrote a few lines for Harriet, explaining she was going to return the children to their family and not to worry if she was gone for a few days. She placed the note under a rock on her porch. A silent signal to her only friend. Dawn broke in a pale pink against a clear sky. Amelia fed the children one last time with the barley porridge, bundled them securely in the sled, and loaded supplies onto the back of Daisy, her faithful horse. With one final look at the cabin that had sheltered her grief, she headed towards the creek. Many horses was there as promised, with 3 other men. They moved in a dignified silence, broken only by the wind and the breathing of the horses. Amelia kept the sled carefully balanced, her heart beating to the rhythm of this journey into an unknown world. For hours they rode through rolling hills and stands of pine, avoiding open country. Occasionally, many horses would look back, his eyes silently asking if the children were all right, and Amelia would nod in return. At midday, they stopped by a frozen stream to water the horses. One of the older men, named Firecloud, approached Amelia. In halting English he said, "These children, we owe you a great debt." Amelia simply nodded. She offered him a piece of dried fruit from her satchel. He accepted it with a polite nod. It was a small gesture, but it erased all boundaries. As the afternoon deepened, Amelia began to see signs of life ahead, thin trails of smoke rising from beyond a ridge. Many horses pointed, explaining that their camp was just over the rise. A knot formed in Amelia's stomach. She couldn't forget Harriet's warning about the armed men scouring the plains, but when they crested the hill, all she saw was a scene of peace. Nestled in a wind-sheltered valley was the temporary village of the Lakota, a picture of resilient life amidst the winter. Several tipis were erected, children in thick hides were playing, and a few women stood watching them approach. Their eyes full of curiosity at the sight of a white woman accompanying their warriors. The entire camp fell silent as they entered. Many horses dismounted, and Amelia followed suit, carefully lifting the sled from Daisy's back. All eyes were on her. From one of the largest tipis, a tall figure stepped out, and the entire camp seemed to hold its breath. He wore a breastplate made of bone. His thick black hair was adorned with small pieces of turquoise, and a single eagle feather was tied to his brow. Amelia knew instantly this had to be White Crow, the children's father. He approached, his eyes never leaving the bundle in Amelia's arms. They were the eyes of a father who had reached the very edge of despair and now stood on the threshold of a miracle. Amelia slowly pulled back the blanket, revealing the three sleeping faces. A choked sound, half belief and half disbelief, escaped White Crow's throat. He fell to his knees on the snowy ground, his strong hands trembling as he gently touched the cheek of each of his children, as if afraid they were merely an illusion created by grief. Silent tears streamed down the warrior's face. Many horses stood beside him, quietly explaining the story in the Lakota tongue. In that moment, Amelia felt she should step back to give space for this sacred moment. She had done her part. After a long while, White Crow looked up at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. In halting English, he could only manage, "They are alive because of you." Amelia nodded, her own throat tight with emotion. "I found them. They are strong." White Crow rose, taking each of his children into his arms. Then he looked at her, sincerity shining in his words. "You come. Sit by our fire." An older woman, with silver-streaked hair and a face lined with wisdom, came forward. Many horses introduced her as Winyan Tanka, White Crow's mother. She cradled each of her grandchildren with a holy reverence. Then she turned and embraced Amelia. It was a wordless embrace that conveyed the gratitude and welcome of an entire people. Night fell on the plains, and the Lakota lit a large fire in the center of their camp. The warm circle of its light was a fragile fortress against the darkness and cold of the night. Amelia sat cross-legged on a hide, nibbling on dried venison and sipping a warm broth. The three infants, finally at peace in the arms of their family, were sleeping soundly. Through Many Horses' translation, White Crow told her the full story. He spoke of the death of his wife, who had exhausted her strength after bringing their children into this world in the harshness of winter. He told of the attack by lawless marauders, white men cast out from their own society, that had scattered his small clan in chaos. His sister-in-law, in her desperation, had left the children at the edge of the settlers' lands, with the faint hope that compassion might prove stronger than hatred. "We have never known such kindness from your people," White Crow said, his voice somber. "You have given me back my children. This is a debt I can never repay." Amelia shook her head. They gave me hope as well. White Crow's gaze turned to the star-filled sky. After a long silence, he spoke again, and many horses translated, "I wish to honor you before my people, to show that we do not forget such an act." Amelia started to protest, but she saw the seriousness on White Crow's face. This was an honor that could not be lightly refused, but just as peace seemed to have found them, a distant sound shattered it. The faint sound of hooves, weak but unmistakable, echoed from the distance. The peace shattered. Many horses in Fire Cloud exchanged alarmed glances. White Crow tensed, his shoulders squared. They listened, and the sound grew louder, closer. Fear flickered through the camp. Men reached for rifles, women hurried children into the tippahs. From the darkness, a voice shouted, "Halt! Show yourselves!" The flicker of torchlight illuminated a half-dozen riders on the ridge. A familiar chill ran down Amelia's spine. Even in the dim light, she recognized the man at the lead, Robert Grady. Tense moments stretched as Grady and his men rode into the valley, rifles raised. The Lakota warriors had formed a defensive line, with White Crow at the front, having passed the children to safety behind him. Amelia, without thinking, stepped into the space between the two groups, her heart pounding in her chest. She held up her hands. "Stop, Mr. Grady," she called out. "There are women and children here." Grady's face was a mask of anger and blind determination. "Then let their men come out and answer for the stolen cattle. We've tracked them all over." "These plains, there was no raid here," Amelia insisted. She gestured to White Crow. "They are just trying to survive." Grady spat on the ground. "Your word is worthless, Farnsworth. And rumor has it you stole their babies. You've been meddling where you don't belong." Amelia's blood boiled. They were abandoned. "I saved them, and now their father has them back. No harm has been done." "Here," White Crow stepped forward, raising his open palm. In his halting English he said, "No cattle, no white war." Grady merely scoffed. But as he looked at the silent, unyielding line of Lakota warriors, and at the determined white woman standing between them, hesitation flickered in the eyes of the men behind him. They had come for an easy fight, not a confrontation that could cost them their lives. "Use your eyes," Amelia pleaded. "Does this look like the camp of warmongers?" Finally, Grady snarled, "We'll be back with the sheriff. If I find a single one of my cattle missing, I'll hold you responsible." He pointed a gloved finger at White Crow, then at Amelia. "Mark my words, Farnsworth. You've chosen your side." He yanked his reins, and the posse disappeared into the darkness from which they came. A sigh of relief spread through the camp, but it could not dispel the chill of lingering danger. White Crow knew Grady would not give up. They could not stay here. They had been safe tonight because of their numbers, but tomorrow Grady could return with a larger force. They had to leave immediately to protect their most precious lives. In the heavy silence that followed, a desperate plan was forged. "Come to my cabin," many horses proposed, a profound trust in his voice. It was a fragile sanctuary, dangerously close to Maple Bend, but safer than the open plains. Under the faint light of dawn, they moved quietly, a silent procession seeking safety in the very heart of enemy territory. Amelia's cabin became a miniature encampment. While the men and women set up temporary shelters hidden behind the trees, White Crow and Winyantanka cared for the infants inside. But Amelia's supplies were depleted. She knew she had to return to Maple Bend, accompanied by Fire Cloud and another warrior. She bravely rode back into town. At the general store, Harriet's face went pale when she saw them, but her kindness won out over her fear. Trouble found them almost immediately. Robert Grady, who seemed to be lurking like a vulture, charged in like a bull, his hand on his revolver. "Farnsworth," he roared, "you dare bring them into our town!" Fire Cloud stood motionless, solid as a rock, but Amelia stepped between them. They are here for lawful business, Mr. Grady. There is no law against that. Shut your mouth, Harriet. Grady snapped as the store owner tried to speak in their defense. He turned back to Amelia, his eyes bloodshot. You are a disgrace. Just then, Sheriff Bullock entered, his presence immediately cooling the room's temperature. Stand down, Grady, he said, his voice calm but filled with authority. I enforce the law, not your personal prejudice. Unless they break a law, the only one causing a disturbance here is you. Grady froze, furious but powerless against the law. Firecloud quietly paid Harriet, took the goods, and under Bullock's watchful eye, they departed. Get them out of here before this escalates, Bullock said quietly to Amelia. This town's patience has its limits. That night, as the moon hung high in a clear sky, White Crow asked Amelia to follow him to the clearing behind her cabin. Many horses accompanied them to translate. White Crow explained that in the tradition of his people, an act of extraordinary courage and compassion could not go unanswered. Then, he let out a call. From the darkness of the woods, they emerged. Not just a few men, but dozens. Dozens of Lakota warriors on horseback, some from allied bands who had heard the news, silently filled the clearing. They emerged not like ghosts, but like the very soul of this land. Amelia held her breath, overwhelmed by the majestic sight. She had never known so many had gathered, unseen, to protect their own. We come to honor you, Amelia Farnsworth. White Crow's voice rang out, carried by many horses. Translation: You have saved the blood of our people. Our hearts are full of gratitude, he continued, his voice echoing. We name you Winyan Waoki, the woman who helps. You are forever a friend to us. A chorus of assent rose from the warriors. Hot tears streamed down Amelia's cheeks, not from sadness, but from an emotion too vast to name. White Crow came forward and respectfully placed a beautifully beaded necklace around her neck, but the sacred moment was torn apart. From the distance, torches appeared again, more numerous than before, a serpent of fire slithering over the hillside, followed by the thunder of hooves. Grady was back, and this time he had at least 20 men with him. Instantly, the Lakota warriors formed ranks, a silent steel wall of bows and rifles. Amelia's blood ran cold. But this time, something was different. She stepped forward, the necklace on her chest like a shield of honor. The arrogance on Grady's face froze as he and his men halted at the edge of the clearing. He had expected to face a small band, not an army of 100 warriors staring back at him in the cold moonlight. His men faltered, fear plain on their faces. Go home, Grady, Amelia called out, her voice no longer a plea, but a command. There is no fight to be had here. They are leaving. We can't take on 100 of them, Grady. One of his men said, his voice trembling. Let's go. Grady glared at Amelia, hatred burning in his eyes. You stand with them, Farnsworth, he snarled, but his threats were now empty. He was defeated. Without enough men, without enough courage, he could do nothing. With a final curse, he turned his horse, and his entire posse dissolved into the darkness. Amelia let out a long, shaky breath, her knees nearly buckling. The battle was over. As the first rays of the new day painted the horizon, the Lakota band prepared to travel north. White Crow came to Amelia, 2 of the triplets held in his arms, the third cradled by Winyan Tunka. Their cheeks were pink in the crisp morning air, a living testament to a life that had been won back from the edge of death. A soft, serene smile touched Amelia's lips. Many horses explained that White Crow wanted her to have a keepsake. He respectfully presented her with a tiny pair of exquisitely beaded moccasins. They had belonged to the children's mother, a family heirloom. Amelia accepted them, her eyes once again welling with tears. Take good care of them, she whispered. White Crow placed a hand over his heart, a wordless promise. He looked directly into her eyes, gratitude and the sorrow of parting mingling in his gaze. "Our worlds are different," he said, carefully forming the English words, "but you are always a friend. The winds of fate may bring me back." Then, in a silent procession, they departed. Amelia stood before her cabin, her arms wrapped around herself, watching until the figures of horse and rider merged with the horizon, becoming blurry silhouettes before dissolving into the endlessness of the plains. All that remained was her, and the whisper of the wind. In the weeks that followed, Maple Bend treated her with an invisible chill, more biting than the harshest winter. Grady had spread his stories, painting her as a traitor, an Indian lover. Harriet remained a loyal visitor, but others averted their gaze on the street. She had no regrets, but the price of doing the right thing was sometimes loneliness. She returned to her daily rhythm, but the cabin no longer felt as empty. It was filled with the memory of 3 small souls, and the name Winyanwoki echoing in her mind. Spring came, bringing with it the thaw of the snow and the rebirth of the land. Amelia tended her small garden, planting seeds for a new season. With each passing day, hope was cultivated within her. 3 months later, while checking her traps near the creek, she saw a familiar figure emerge, like a spirit from the past returning. Many Horses was back. He led another horse, laden with leather sacks. He explained that White Crow wished to share a portion of the meat from their successful buffalo hunt. It was a gift of bounty, an acknowledgement that she was still part of their circle, but the most precious gift was in a small leather pouch. Many Horses handed it to Amelia. Inside was a letter, written in White Crow's simple English, perhaps with the help of a trader. It read, "Amelia, my children are healthy. They grow like strong young saplings. Every day I think of your kindness. Remember, you are always our friend. May the sky watch over you." Signed, White Crow. Friend of Winyanwoki. Tears blurred Amelia's vision as she read the words over and over. She thanked Many Horses from the bottom of her heart. He simply nodded, the slightest hint of a smile on his usually stoic face, and then he was gone again, vanishing into the vast expanse of the plains. That night, Amelia placed the letter beside the tiny moccasins. She had dared to perform a simple act of compassion during one of the worst blizzards in memory, and from it, something miraculous had grown. 2 worlds, once separated by fear and prejudice, had touched. In that moment, a father had reclaimed his future, a stranger had earned a name of honor, and the seeds of compassion had sprouted in the most barren soil of hostility. Though she did not know what the future held, Amelia Farnsworth, the woman once crushed by loss, had now found a renewed purpose. She knew she would never forget the fateful night 3 Lakota infants arrived on her doorstep, and how that single twist of fate had unlocked the deep well of compassion in her soul, a memory that would forever echo in every sunrise and sunset across the endless plains.